The rain was coming down in sheets, a relentless, freezing deluge that turned the world into a blur of gray and charcoal. It was the kind of storm that drowned out thought, the kind that made the warmth of a car feel like a separate universe. Rocco Moretti sat behind the wheel of his armored black SUV, his knuckles pale as he gripped the leather steering wheel. He squinted through the windshield, the wipers fighting a losing battle against the downpour as he navigated the sharp, treacherous curves of Old Mill Road. This wasn't his usual route. Rocco, a man who controlled half the city's underground operations and wore tailored Italian suits like armor, didn't typically take forgotten backroads. But a bridge washout on Highway 41 had forced a detour, pushing him onto this neglected stretch of asphalt that cut through abandoned farmland and towns the economy had chewed up and spit out. He was already late for a meeting with his capos, and he was mentally calculating the fallout of his absence when he saw it. At first, he thought it was a trick of the storm, a shapeless mass on the shoulder of the road that didn't belong. But as his high beams cut through the gloom, the shape resolved into something that made his breath hitch in his throat. It was a wheelchair, and someone was sitting in it. "What the hell?" Rocco muttered, his voice rough. He slowed the heavy vehicle, his instincts, honed by years of looking over his shoulder, screaming that this could be a trap. But as he rolled closer, the reality of the scene shattered his paranoia. The figure didn't move. He just sat there, slumped over, soaking wet. Rocco pulled over, his hazard lights pulsing red against the wet gravel. He didn't grab his gun, he grabbed an umbrella. Stepping out into the storm, his black Mafia suit instantly began to absorb the damp chill, the pristine white collar of his shirt standing out against the gloom. He splashed through the puddles, his expensive dress shoes ruined in seconds. As he approached, he heard the sound. A low, broken sobbing that was somehow louder than the thunder. "Hey!" Rocco shouted over the wind. "Can you hear me?" When the young man in the wheelchair lifted his head, Rocco felt something in his chest twist, a sensation he hadn't felt in a decade. The man couldn't have been more than 24. He was wearing a soaked red t-shirt that clung to his shivering frame and blue jeans that were dark with water. His hair was plastered to his forehead, and his eyes, wide, terrified, and the color of amber, stared up at Rocco with a mixture of disbelief and pure fear. "Please," the young man whispered, his teeth chattering so hard the words were barely intelligible. "Please don't kill me. I don't have anything." Rocco stopped, looming over him with the umbrella. "I'm not here to hurt you. What are you doing out here?" They left me," the man stammered. Rocco felt a flash of rage, hot and immediate, searing through his veins. "Who left you?" The man just shook his head, fresh tears mixing with the rain on his face. He was shivering violently, his lips turning a dangerous shade of blue. Rocco knew there was no time for an interrogation. He dropped the umbrella, ignoring the rain soaking his suit, and bent down. "I'm going to pick you up," Rocco announced, his voice commanding but surprisingly gentle. "I'm getting you into the car." He didn't wait for permission. Rocco scooped the young man out of the wheelchair. He was light, alarmingly so, like he hadn't eaten a proper meal in weeks. The man didn't protest. He just clung to the lapels of Rocco's black suit jacket with trembling fingers, burying his face in Rocco's shoulder. Rocco carried him to the SUV, settling him into the heated passenger seat. He ran back for the wheelchair, collapsing it with practiced efficiency and shoving it into the trunk before climbing back into the driver's seat. Inside the car, with the climate control blasting hot air and the storm finally locked outside, the silence was heavy. Rocco grabbed a thermos of coffee from the center console. "Here, drink. It's black, but it's hot." The young man took it with shaking hands, needing both to hold the cup steady. Rocco watched him, analyzing him. He saw the fragility, yes, but also a certain desperate resilience. "We need to get you to a hospital," Rocco said, reaching for his encrypted phone. "No." The response was instant and terrified. The young man turned, his amber eyes wide. "Please, no hospital. They'll find me. They'll finish it." Rocco paused, his thumb hovering over the screen. He turned in his seat, the leather creaking. Who will find you? Who did this to you? My stepmother. My stepbrother? The man whispered, the truth spilling out on a shuddering breath. They drove me out here. They put me in the chair and drove away. Rocco stared at him. In his line of work, he had seen cruelty. He had seen betrayal. But this? Abandoning a paralyzed man in a storm to die. This was a level of cowardice that disgusted even a man who broke the law for a living. What's your name? Rocco asked softly. Julian. Julian Thorne. Okay, Julian.
I'm Rocco.
And I promise you, nobody is going to finish anything tonight. Rocco made a decision then. A decision that broke every rule of his carefully compartmentalized life. I'm not taking you to a hospital. I'm taking you to my home. It's the safest place in the city. Julian looked at him, taking in the expensive suit, the armored car, the dangerous set of Rocco's jaw. Who are you? Let's just say I'm the guy your stepfamily is going to wish they never messed with. Rocco drove not to the suburbs, but to a sprawling, gated estate on the outskirts of the city, hidden behind high walls and surveillance cameras. As the heavy iron gates swung open, Julian stared at the mansion ahead. It was a fortress, beautiful but imposing. Rocco pulled up to the main entrance. Before he could even kill the engine, the front door opened, and an older woman with a stern face and a compassionate demeanor hurried out. This was Mrs. Rossi, Rocco's housekeeper, medic and surrogate mother figure. Rocco, you are late. The pasta is... She stopped dead when she saw Rocco lifting the soaking wet man in the red shirt and blue jeans from the car. Madonna mia, what is this? Help me get him inside. Elena, he's freezing. Prepare the guest room on the ground floor. The one with the accessible bath. Within 30 minutes, Julian was dry, dressed in a pair of silk pajamas that were far too big for him, and buried under 3 down comforters in a bed that cost more than a mid-sized sedan. Rocco had changed out of his wet suit into a fresh one. Impeccable black trousers and a crisp white shirt, the top button undone. He sat in a velvet armchair by the bed, watching Julian sip a bowl of Mrs. Rossi's broth. You said stepfamily? Rocco prompted, his voice low. Tell me everything. Julian took a deep breath, the warmth of the room finally seeping into his bones. My father died 3 weeks ago. A stroke. It was sudden. He was everything to me. After my accident when I was 16, a car crash that took my legs, he dedicated his life to making sure I was okay. And the stepmother, Veronica, and her son, Grant. They married my dad 5 years ago. They played the part perfectly. Veronica was doting, Grant was the cool older brother. But the moment Dad was gone, the mask slipped. Julian looked down at his hands. They told me we were going on a trip to a mountain cabin to grieve together. I believed them. I wanted to believe them, but we kept taking wrong turns. When we stopped on Old Mill Road, Grant said he heard a noise in the engine. Veronica suggested I get some fresh air. They helped me out, and then they got back in the car and left. Rocco's hands gripped the arms of the chair. Why? Money? The will, Julian said bitterly. It was read 2 days after the funeral. Dad left everything to me. The house, the investments, the life insurance.
Million.
Veronica and Grant got a stipend, but the bulk was in a trust for my care. If I die, it all goes to the next of kin. Them. So they decided to speed up the process. Rocco concluded, his voice dark. I screamed for them, Julian whispered, tears welling up again. I watched their taillights fade. I sat there for 4 hours, Rocco. For hours thinking about how cold it was, and how I was going to die alone. Rocco stood up, pacing the room. The sheer malice of it made his blood boil. He walked to the window, looking out at the rain that was still falling. They won't get away with it. They already have, Julian said hopelessly. They're smart. They'll say I ran away, or that I got confused. It's my word against theirs, and I'm just the crippled burden in their narrative. Rocco turned back, a dangerous glint in his eyes. You're forgetting something, Julian. You're not alone anymore. You have me. But who are you? Julian asked again, sensing the power radiating from the man. You drive an armored car. You live in a fortress. You're not an insurance agent. Rocco smirked, a dry, humorless expression.
No.
I'm the man who runs the unions and the shipping yards. I'm the man the police don't touch because I know where the skeletons are buried. I'm the gay mafia boss the tabloids speculate about but never photograph. And you are now under my protection. Julian's eyes went wide. He should have been terrified. But looking at Rocco, this man who had stopped in a storm, who had carried him like he weighed nothing, who had given him soup and a warm bed, he didn't feel fear. He felt safe. The next morning, the house was alive with activity. Julian woke to the sound of laughter. He maneuvered his wheelchair, which Mrs. Rossi had cleaned and oiled, out into the hallway. He found the source of the laughter in the kitchen. A young girl, maybe 13, was sitting at the island counter, eating pancakes. She had dark curls and Rocco's sharp nose. This was Sophia, Rocco's niece, whom he had taken in after his own brother was killed in a turf war years ago. Uncle Rocco, who's the guy in the red shirt? Sophia asked, spotting Julian. Rocco was standing by the stove pouring espresso. He looked at Julian, his expression softening. This is Julian. He's staying with us for a while. Julian, this is Sophia. She's loud, obnoxious, and unfortunately, my heart. Hi, Julian said shyly. Cool wheelchair, Sophia said, unbothered. Do you play video games? Uncle Rocco sucks at Mario Kart. I'm okay at them, Julian smiled, the first genuine smile he'd worn in weeks. Rocco brought Julian a cup of coffee. Dante is on his way. He's my lawyer, the best in the state. We're going to fix this. Dante arrived an hour later, a sharp man with glasses and a ruthless reputation. He sat at the dining table, listening to Julian's story, taking notes on a tablet. It's a strong narrative, Dante said. But without physical evidence, the DA might hesitate to press attempted murder charges. We need proof they were there. They'll claim they were miles away, Julian said. Searching for me. Liars always make mistakes, Rocco said, leaning against the wall, his arms crossed over his black suit. We just need to find it. Rocco didn't rely on the police to find the evidence. He put his own people on it. While Julian spent the next few weeks recovering, gaining weight thanks to Mrs. Rossi's cooking, bonding with Sophia over video games, and spending long evenings talking with Rocco in the library, Rocco's network went to work. They pulled phone records. They tracked the GPS data from Grant's luxury sedan, which he thought he had disabled. But the breakthrough came from a gas station camera. 3 weeks after the rescue, Rocco walked into the library where Julian was reading. He placed a tablet on the desk. Got them, Rocco said simply. Julian looked at the screen. It was grainy footage from a place called Miller's Stop, a gas station on Old Mill Road. The timestamp was 3:47 p.m. on the day of the storm. It showed Grant's car pulling up. Grant got out to pump gas. Veronica got out to buy snacks. They looked calm, cheerful even. They were 2 miles from where they had abandoned Julian, driving in the opposite direction. They filed a police report saying they were 50 miles south at a rest stop searching for you at this exact time, Rocco explained, a predatory satisfaction in his voice. This proves they were lying. It proves they were at the scene of the crime. Is it enough? Julian asked, his voice trembling. It's enough to bury them, Rocco promised. Dante has already sent this to the district attorney. Because of who I am, I can't be the one to hand it over publicly, but Dante has ways. The police are picking them up right now. Julian let out a breath he felt like he'd been holding for a month. He looked up at Rocco. Thank you. I don't know how to repay you. Rocco walked around the desk. He hesitated, then reached out, his hand resting gently on Julian's shoulder. The heat of his palm seared through Julian's shirt. You don't owe me anything. Having you here, seeing you safe, that's enough. There was a charge in the air, a tension that had been building between them. Rocco, the hardened criminal with the code of honor, and Julian, the gentle survivor with the heart of gold. Julian reached up, covering Rocco's hand with his own. "You're a good man, Rocco Moretti." "No," Rocco murmured, his thumb brushing Julian's neck. "I'm a bad man who is trying to do one good thing." The arrest of Veronica and Grant was spectacular. The local news covered it extensively, the grieving stepfamily exposed as monsters. The trial began 2 months later. Rocco couldn't sit in the front row. His presence would complicate things for the prosecution. But he sat in the back, obscured by the shadows, watching over Julian like a guardian angel in a bespoke suit. Julian took the stand wearing a new suit Rocco had bought him. He was nervous, but when he looked to the back of the room and saw Rocco's stoic nod, he found his strength. He told the jury everything. He described the cold, the rain, the sound of the car driving away. He described the fear of dying alone. Veronica's lawyer tried to paint Julian as unstable, suggesting he had rolled away on his own to spite his family. But then Dante's team unveiled the gas station footage. The courtroom gasped. The timeline didn't lie. The credit card receipts didn't lie. The jury took 4 hours to deliberate. Guilty on all counts. Attempted murder, conspiracy, elder abuse, and fraud. When the verdict was read, Grant screamed profanities at the jury. Veronica simply wept, her facade finally crumbling. As the bailiffs led them away, Julian sat in his wheelchair at the plaintiff's table, feeling a weight lift off his chest that he hadn't realized was crushing him. He turned his chair and looked to the back of the room. Rocco was already gone, slipping out to avoid the press. But Julian knew where he would be. Back at the estate, the mood was celebratory. Mrs. Rossi had prepared a feast. Sophia was cheering. But Julian found Rocco outside on the terrace, overlooking the sprawling gardens. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the lawn. "It's over," Julian said, rolling up beside him. Rocco turned, swirling a glass of scotch. "It is. You have your life back, Julian. Your father's house, the money, everything. You're a free man." "I am," Julian agreed. He looked down at his hands, then back at Rocco. "So, I guess this is the part where I pack up and go back to my empty house." Rocco stiffened. He took a sip of his drink, staring out at the horizon. "It's your home. It's where you belong." "Is it?" Julian asked quietly. "Because for the last 3 months, this place has felt more like home than that house ever did." Rocco turned to face him fully. "Julian, look at me. Look at who I am. I'm not a white knight. I have enemies. I live a life that is dangerous. You don't want to be part of this. You think I'm scared of you?" Julian challenged, wheeling closer. "Rocco, you saved me from a literal storm. You gave me dignity when my own family treated me like garbage. You make me feel safe. I don't care about the other stuff. I care about the man who makes me coffee in the morning and lets my niece, your niece, beat him at Mario Kart." Rocco set the glass down on the stone railing. "I'm 12 years older than you."
I'm damaged goods.
"I'm in a wheelchair," Julian countered. "I know a thing or two about people thinking you're broken." "You're not broken," Rocco said fiercely, crouching down so they were eye level. "You are the strongest man I have ever met." "Then let me stay," Julian whispered. "Not because I have nowhere else to go, but because I want to be with you." Rocco looked at him, searching his face for any sign of hesitation. Finding none, he finally let his guard drop. The wall came down. "If you stay forever. I don't let go of what's mine." "I'm counting on it," Julian smiled. Rocco leaned in, cupping Julian's face in his large, rough hands. He kissed him then, a slow, searing kiss that tasted of scotch and promise. It was the seal on a bond that had started in the rain and forged in the fire of justice. The months that followed were a transformation. Julian used his inheritance not to move out, but to invest. He started a foundation for disabled youth, using his experience to help others. He also insisted on paying for renovations to Rocco's estate, making the entire grounds fully accessible. Ramps were integrated seamlessly into the architecture. The pool was modified. The gardens were paved. "You're turning my fortress into a rehab center," Rocco grumbled playfully one afternoon, watching contractors widen a doorway. I'm making it a home, Julian corrected, kissing him on the cheek. Sophia adored having Julian there permanently. He helped her with homework and became the softer, artistic balance to Rocco's disciplined parenting. They became a family, unconventional, perhaps, but fiercely loyal. 1 year after the storm, on a crisp evening in October, Rocco walked Julian out to the garden. The air was cool, reminiscent of that night, but there was no rain, only the soft glow of string lights Rocco had strung up in the trees. Rocco was wearing his signature black Mafia suit, but he had added a red pocket square, a nod to the shirt Julian had worn the night they met. Julian was in a deep blue velvet blazer, looking healthier and happier than he ever had. Why are we out here? Julian asked, eyeing the lights. I wanted to ask you something, Rocco said. He looked nervous, a rare expression for the dawn. He dropped to one knee, not to pick Julian up this time, but to offer him something. He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. Inside sat a simple, masculine platinum band. Julian, Rocco began, his voice thick with emotion. A year ago, I took a wrong turn and found the best thing that ever happened to me. You saved me just as much as I saved you. You brought light into a very dark world. I love you. I want to spend the rest of my life protecting you, arguing with you, and loving you. Will you marry me? Julian's hands flew to his mouth. Tears pricked his eyes, but they were happy tears this time. Yes, yes, Rocco. 1,000 times yes. Rocco slid the ring onto Julian's finger and stood up, pulling Julian into an embrace. The wedding was held 3 months later on the estate grounds. It wasn't a quiet affair. It was a gathering of two worlds. On one side, Rocco's associates, men in sharp suits with dangerous eyes who wept openly during the vows. On the other, the friends and staff from Julian's foundation. Sophia stood as the best woman, holding the rings with pride. Mrs. Rossi cried through the entire ceremony. Rocco stood at the altar, looking devastatingly handsome. He watched Julian come down the aisle. Julian had decided to wheel himself down the aisle, refusing assistance, his arms strong, his head held high. He wore a custom white suit that shone in the winter sun. When he reached the altar, Rocco took his hands. The officiant, Dante, who had gotten ordained just for this, smiled at them. They wrote their own vows. Julian, Rocco said, his voice carrying over the silence of the crowd. I used to think power was about control, about fear. But then I met you, and I realized true power is the strength to endure. The courage to love when the world gives you every reason not to. You are my heart. You are my conscience. I promise to stand between you and the storm every single day for the rest of my life. Julian squeezed Rocco's hands, his eyes shining. Rocco, you found me when I was invisible. You saw a man when everyone else saw a chair. You didn't just save my life. You gave me a life worth living. I promise to be your safe harbor. I promise to love the man behind the suit. I love you, unconditionally. When they kissed, the applause was deafening. It echoed off the high walls of the estate, a sound of pure joy that chased away the shadows of the past. Later that night, during the reception, Rocco found Julian near the edge of the dance floor. The party was in full swing. Sophia was teaching a group of hardened enforcers how to do a TikTok dance. Mrs. Rossi was force-feeding cannoli to the guests. Rocco leaned down, resting his hands on the handles of Julian's wheelchair. Happy. Unbelievably, Julian said, leaning his head back against Rocco's chest. Who would have thought? The deserted road, the rain. It felt like the end. It was the end, Rocco said, kissing the top of his husband's head. It was the end of the lonely parts of our lives. And the beginning of this. Julian smiled, watching the fireflies dance in the darkness. Much like they had on the night he realized he was falling in love. He touched the ring on his finger, feeling the solid weight of it. I love you, Rocco. I love you, Julian. Rocco Moretti, the feared boss of the city, smiled. A true, unguarded smile that reached his eyes. He spun Julian's chair around and wheeled him onto the dance floor. Under the starlight, surrounded by the family they had built from the broken pieces of their pasts, they danced. And for the first time in both of their lives, the storm was truly over.